Today's video
Yes.
sponsored by our continued sponsor.
Would that be findthebestcarprice.com/insider, where Jeff and his team have compiled all the manufacturer rebates and incentives by make and model for the consumers out there? So you have a one-stop shop to go to find out what they are at findthebestcarprice.com/insider.
And fun news, we're bringing incentives into the Your Auto Advocate app sometime in January. So we'll have to see if Jeff still wants to sponsor then.
Yeah,
but until then.
At that point, we can probably kiss Jeff goodbye.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about that, but we'll figure it out.
Yes.
All right, Pops, what are we talking about today?
Auto dealership buy-sells. Okay, and what that is the number of automobile dealerships that get bought and sold.
Okay.
As businesses. And
so this will be interesting for our audience because people that watch our videos, our community, we're interested in obviously buying cars ourselves, but also just the inside news of the business.
Of the business. And believe it or not, even though this year has been a COVID year, pandemic year, even in spite of COVID and the pandemic, automobile dealership profits have skyrocketed. And they've skyrocketed for two major reasons. One, there has been a shortage of both new and used cars for the amount of demand there is to buy those products. So anytime you have a shortage of supply, then the price goes up for the supply that's out there.
Of course,
So dealers are actually making more money on the front end of car deals, especially on the new car side, where before COVID, they were averaging about $200 front-end gross profit on every new car sold, to where they're averaging a little over $1,000 per new car sold.
And we've seen quite a few new cars with additional dealer markup on short supply vehicles. Toyota's been, that Kia with the Palisade, et cetera.
A lot of
Telluride,
cars.
excuse me.
Yeah. And we've seen the same type of situation play out on the pre-owned side, because there's been a shortage of pre-owned cars, and dealers have been overpaying to buy cars for their inventory, and conversely, they have gotten the consumers, because of the market supply, to overpay as well. So those are one factor, the shortage of cars. The other factor is that with the advent of the pandemic back in March, when dealerships started closing down and had to shut down for a while, they eventually, when they reopened, had let staff go.
We talked about this in a video right when the pandemic was beginning, where you said, dealerships are going to figure out a way to operate with fewer staff, and they have.
I'm a living example.
Yeah, you did get let go. When was it?
In March, when they shut down the dealerships. They permanently let go 100 people. I was one of the permanent people to be let go, because in reality, my job as somebody who was tasked with trying to figure out how to maintain customer loyalty through loan and lease portfolios, they didn't really need me for that.
I think it's just important context. So my dad was a salesperson, a sales manager, and then retired, and then after retirement got bored and went back to his old employer and said, "Can I help you, with lease end portfolio retention?"
Yes.
So that was your last role. But you were more like part-time.
I was.
I think you got paid hourly, like $20 an hour or something.
I believe it was close to 25. I'm not sure.
Your Auto Advocate.
Something like that.
But regardless, okay, so dealerships made more profit.
Yes.
Because of the pandemic, and they figured out how to operate with lesser expense.
Yes, lesser expense, because there were less employees.
Be careful, you almost hit
I almost hit the mic. So there were less employees, and as business ramped back up, well, they didn't necessarily bring back all the employees. They have figured out how to operate with less staff than they did before. Many of dealerships during the height of the pandemic in March and April cut way back on their advertising expenses. So they've figured out how to operate with lower expenses and fewer personnel, or less personnel. And conversely, that means that the dealerships are making more money than they've ever made, and they've become more desirable for purchase from other either dealer groups or individuals that are looking to get into the car business. So what they found is that the buy-sell agreements have continued to skyrocket in the third quarter, and they are projecting that this will be the biggest year ever since 2015 for the number of buy-sells that are completed in an annual year.
Question for you: who is they?
The Kerrigan and Associates are the ones who put this report out.
Gotcha.
And they being Kerrigan and Associates, they assist dealers in selling franchises, dealerships, and those who are looking to buy dealerships.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're in an environment now that there's a lot of money being put into buying and selling
Yes.
automobile franchises. And so one question I have when this happens, well, we talked about this earlier in the year. One of our guesses as to what would happen as a result of COVID would be the consolidation of dealerships.
Yes.
Because there's already too many. There are
Yes.
way too many new franchise dealerships. And then as a result of the pandemic, they'd realize that if we consolidate, and people will still come to us and buy cars. And so one of the questions I have is, does the nameplate stay on these dealerships? Like, is that part of what you're buying when you buy a dealership? Or if we bought a dealership,
Yes.
which I don't think we're ever going to do.
I hope not.
I really don't want to do that.
Yeah, me neither.
Would we change it to Shefska
Oh, yes.
Lexus?
Whenever they're sold,
Yeah.
the name changes.
Interesting, because
the
you think
new-
there'd be some goodwill associated
Well, there
with
is,
the old
and
name.
and that's the big thing that you're paying for.
It's like the existing customer base, right?
You're
Because the
paying
service
for,
drive is
you're
where you
paying
make
for
money.
the existing customer base. You're paying for their reputation in the community in
Yeah.
the area. It's called goodwill or blue sky. In the car business, it's called blue sky.
I've never heard of that, but that's
Yeah,
interesting.
that's the, that's the term in the car business for goodwill when you're buying a dealership. And right now, they're paying, buyers are paying somewhere between 6 and 7 times earnings in goodwill
Wow.
or blue sky in order to buy that dealership. So if you have a dealership that typically makes, I don't know, $5,000 or $5 million a year, and you can sell it for $35 million, I guess you might be interested.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yes.
And then I imagine that the actual relationship, like contractual relationship back with the OEM is also very,
It has
really
to be
valuable.
approved by the OEM.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you wanted to go buy a dealership,
Which I don't.
Since you have absolutely no dealership experience, you probably would not be approved to buy the dealership unless you had a management team that had dealership experience, that the factory would
I know
say,
you're,
there's enough experience there that we would let you buy the dealership.
I know you're busy on Saturday nights. You do this live stream, but are you free every other day of the week for managing my dealership?
Sure.
You're such a good dad.
Yeah, I am a good dad. Yeah. And you know what makes me an even better dad? I don't get paid a lot. Wait
You don't get paid at all.
I don't get paid at all. But I've heard a rumor that might start next year, but we shall see.
January, I ordered my dad a t-shirt, by the way. Also,
Yes.
we are going to dinner tonight. I'm treating my dad to Del Frisco's, which is one of my favorite steakhouses. So I'm very excited for that.
Me too. Yeah. The thing that I'm most excited is to actually see him whip that credit card out of his pocket and hand it to the waiter to pay for the meal.
I will take a photo tonight, Andrew. I will send that to you, and if you can
Yes.
put that in the video, I would be greatly
Yes.
appreciative. But blur out, my name.
And once again, Andrew, figure out some way to put hair on the top of my head so people could have a sense of what I might have looked like, I don't know, 40 years ago when I was thin and, well, hairy.
So one other comment I want to make, Dad.
Yes.
How many transactions, I think it was 70 or so, actually took place in that third quarter, which to
Yes.
me is kind of crazy to think that 70 or more dealerships would change hands in one
Well,
quarter.
they expect somewhere around 186 closed transactions this year, which is, believe it or not, I mean, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's 17,000 dealerships out there, so that, you're talking about, what, 1%? But that's a lot of dealerships to change hands because it's billions of dollars when you
Yeah.
think about it. And
Ooh, close.
Yeah, very close. And what's really happening is there's a lot of mega dealerships or
Your Auto Nations, your Lithias.
well, but that are buying localized dealer groups.
Sure.
Keys Automotive was a big one that was just recently sold. They sold the bulk of their stores. They kept one or two. I almost did it again, or I did. They kept one or two of their stores. So a lot of the localized Mega dealers are selling out to
The public
public.
traded. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And those localized ones would be like the dealer group you used to work for. They may have 5 to
Absolutely.
10 stores in a region. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And
Which, if you have 5 to 10 stores, you're sitting on potentially, $500,000, and if you sold them, I mean, it obviously depends.
$500,000, more than that.
So one other question I'll ask:
Yeah.
different brands obviously carry different premiums, right?
Yes, absolutely. And your luxury brands, your BMW, your Mercedes-Benz, your Lexus, the multiples for goodwill on those is probably a tad bit higher than it is on a domestic brand.
So when I'm driving past, Automobile Row, and I see
Yes.
the BMW dealership, I mean, that could be that's $100 million potentially a year business, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, these
Yeah.
things get sold for a lot of money. It's big dollars. The auto complex that I used to work in North Scottsdale. I mean, when Mr. Penske built the complex, he spent about $120 million to build that complex. Well, that complex today with all those dealerships, I don't know, 700 million, $1 billion. It could be
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, they carry from Ferraris down to Minis. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll link to the research or the article down below in the description. Like always, Pops, appreciate your candor and kindness
Yes,
on the mic.
And if I was a customer,
Yeah.
my concern would be that I'm always going to be asked to pay even more because these dealerships are getting sold and they need to be making back their money.
Yeah, the consolidation I don't necessarily think is in the best interest of the car buyer, but
It is not.
yeah.
Yes. Just my parting words, it is not.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you, handsome.